Hello, hello! Welcome back to Loki's Librarian and our weekly books and booze review. I am your librarian, Katrina. If you are new here, welcome. This is where I review a book a week and then I mix up a cocktail in the process. This month we are looking at some of Hollywood's greats. Last week we took a look at what inspired Alfred Hitchcock. This week we're going to look at the comedy genius behind the greatest comedy of all time, making this week's book Surely You Can't Be Serious, The True Story of Airplane by David Zucker, Jim Abrahams, and Jerry Zucker. Formerly known as Zaz, because that was their production studio, I think. Anyways, they call themselves Zaz, and it fits. They're Zazzy. The accompanying cocktail is called a Dirty Shirley, after what is most undoubtedly the most quoted movie line in history.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Along with...
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking.
That's the other most quoted line in movie history. So, a Dirty Shirley is 2 ounces of vodka, 1 ounce of Grenadine. Top it up with a lemon lime soda, Sprite, 7-Up, whatever your flavor is, and then drop in a Maraschino Cherry to garnish. So let's do this. So a Dirty Shirley would be a really sticky one to develop a drinking problem with.
As much as anything else led to my drinking problem.
So I probably won't be pouring any on my face. This book is written like a very long 343-page interview between the 3 authors. And it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. One would think a 343-page interview would be wretched, but really, about 10 pages in, I realized it was almost like a documentary script. But like literally, you could almost see a camera on them, each one talking with occasional cutaways to the quotes from other people who were involved in the movie in some fashion. Or impacted by the film. They don't even have to have been in the film, just people who are impacted by it. They have quotes from Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They have quotes from Weird Al Yankovic, from at least one of the Wayans brothers, Jimmy Kimmel, David Letterman. All of these people are quoted in this book. It's wonderful. It covers everything from their start as Kentucky Fried Theater in Madison, Wisconsin, to moving that theater to California, Kentucky Fried Movie, and the 5-year-long process to create and make Airplane. From how they came to cast who they cast to what inspired the movie. So the team of Zaz, Zucker, Abraham Zucker, were all born and raised in Wisconsin. Like, their families were friends, and I believe their fathers were actually in business together. There's a business card in there from when they were in the real estate together. Somebody's sister married somebody's brother or something. All of this is in the book, so if you want the specific details, you'd have to read the book to find the exact, quote and detail. But it's all there. Oh, I forgot a spoon. I don't think I need a spoon. Or a spoon, a straw. Unless I am going to develop a drinking problem, in which case I definitely need a straw. I'm not going to develop a drinking problem. I don't want to get, liquid on my microphone. That would kind of ruin my microphone. Be funny though, wouldn't it? But what sort of launched them on the path that led to Airplane was when the Zuckers' house caught fire when they were kids, believe it or not. This is an anecdote told in the book. And it's kind of a good way to launch it off because it's an outstanding quote, or rule to live by, I guess. And while the firemen were all running around trying to set up their ladders, their neighbor, Mrs. Zubatsky, who they give full credit to, yelled at the firemen to forget the ladders and just point the hose at the fire, which the firemen did, and the fire was duly extinguished. And the boys kind of took this to heart and created what they call Mrs. Zubatsky's Law. Never assume that just because it's someone's job, they know how to do it. If you have a better idea, put down your laundry and do something about it. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Don't wait for somebody else just because it's their job. It doesn't mean they know what they're doing. My God. I've had Dirty Shirleys before and I love it. I have hair in my cocktail. Hopefully it's my hair. And basically using that as a model, they would grow up watching these super serious shows with heavy dialogue and make up their own dialogue. Sort of a Mystery Science Theater 3000 before that was really a thing. And this habit of creating their own funny dialogue in these ultra-serious dramatic pieces led to them finding a movie called 0 Hour. And this would become the template for Airplane. And enough of the dialogue and story was so shot for shot that ultimately they ended up purchasing the rights to 0 Hour just to avoid copyright infringement. Because claiming it's satire will only take you so far before you land in court. So they needed to own those rights, and they did. They bought it, and there are no lawsuits. And I think the guy who originally wrote 0 Hour was immensely flattered to have inspired them in that way, which, hey, who wouldn't be, right? But the good time spent laughing at that gave them this kind of kernel for an idea for deadpan humor. And those shows would very much impact who they got to play the key roles of Rex Kramer, which would be Robert Stack. Steve McCroskey was played by Lloyd Bridges. Captain Clarence Over was played by Peter Graves. And Dr. Rumack, Leslie Nielsen. None of these actors were known for being comedic. Up until starring in this film, they were all these absolute serious, straight-faced actors. The film actually revived most of their careers and gave them another chance at a line in comedy. And of course, Leslie Nielsen went on to very famously star in the Naked Gun series, and worked with the Zaz team, or at least one of them, several of them, boy, pretty much throughout the rest of his career. And the actors, they weren't even sure if the deadpan delivery would work or if the script was even funny. I want to say it was Peter Graves, like, through the script that didn't understand. He's like, I don't get this. And it was his wife who talked him into doing it. She's like, this is hilarious. You've got to do this. Casting Elaine and Ted Stryker was a bit harder because they needed romantic leads who could carry the story, but play it completely straight and with pitch-perfect comedic timing while playing it straight. And they had several actresses who would go on to be like Hollywood A-listers come into audition, including Shelley Long and Sigourney Weaver. One of the reasons Weaver didn't get the part is she said point blank that there was one line she would not be saying.
How I used to sit on your face and wrinkle.
That's the line. And what a absolutely glorious line it is. And can you imagine anybody other than Julie Haggerty playing that part and just in that absolute innocent, sweet voice saying that line? Oh my God, just perfect. Everything was continuing apace, except that they're getting closer and closer to recording and still didn't have their Stryker. And then kind of Kismet steps in, and an agent who had just started working with Robert Hayes said that she knew Howard Cook, who was the studio producer looking for a male lead on a comedy. And Hayes read for the part and was cast opposite Julie Haggerty. And the only genuine comedian they had on cast was Steven Stucker, a.k.a. Johnny. The crew had met Stucker years before when they were auditioning a piano player for their Kentucky Fried Theater show in California, after the show had moved to California from Wisconsin. And Stucker was openly flamboyantly gay, and that was kind of their first experience with that, and nobody cared because he was so damn funny and talented, and he just, off the cuff, was just an amazingly funny guy. So the Zaz team didn't care. They put him in their Kentucky Fried Theater show, in the movie, and then, of course, in Airplane. And it worked because all they cared about was getting a laugh, right? They didn't care about a message, because if you start to insert messages, you lose the joke instantly. All they wanted was a good show. And while they insist that the entire dialogue was completely scripted, I mean, don't get me wrong, they had some off-the-cuff scenes, like when the woman's getting absolutely hysterical.
I can't stand it anymore. I've got to get out of here. I've got to get out of here. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Stewardess, please, let me handle this.
I've got to get...
Calm down. Now get back to your seat. I'll take care of this. Calm down. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Doctor, you're one on the phone.
She came to them and said, hey, in every movie where a woman gets hysterical, somebody slaps her. And so then they started adding them more and more and more. So you get the guys going back with the brass knuckles and the baseball bat and the gun. And she came to them and said, we should do this. And they were like, well, we don't want you to get hurt. She's like, no, don't worry about it. You're not going to hurt me. And, we can fake it. We can fake the slap. And so that's what they did. And so they were open to ideas and suggestions from the cast members, but the dialogue itself was fully scripted. They didn't do ad-libbing. But anything that Johnny said, they had him give them the dialogue. So when this happens...
Oh, it's a big, pretty white plane with red stripes and curtains in the window and wheels, and it looks like a big Tylenol.
They literally were writing the script and said, hey, how would you describe this airplane? And he just goes off like that. Once they had the script written, kind of began the real challenge, which was getting the movie made in such a ways that they retained creative control, which you wouldn't think would be so hard, given that Kentucky Fried Movie had been a smash success several years before. And it earned back, I think it was $600,000 that it took to make it, and they earned that back the first weekend, and then some. Like, everything after that was just pure profit. Their stroke of luck landed when they got an interview with Michael Eisner, who at the time ran Paramount. He wasn't part of the Disney clan at that point in time. And part of this came when a script reader for United Artists had read their script. And UA passed on the script, but the script reader, Susan Bearwald, knew Eisner. And they were having dinner one night, and she told him about the script, and he went and made a call, because way back then they didn't have cell phones. They had to actually get up and go to a pay phone. And he directed his staff member, Don Simpson. I don't remember what Simpson's role was at Paramount, but he said, by the time I get in tomorrow, I hope you own this movie. So the Zaz team found themselves at Paramount in a meeting with Eisner, which is huge, because Paramount was, of course, one of the major players back then. So it still is, but this was big. And Zaz really wanted to make this like almost a period piece, like set in the 1950s with a propeller plane and shot in black and white. And Eisner listened politely, and however much he loved the idea of the movie, he basically said, you've made some interesting points, you've been logical and convincing, and, quote, you may even be right. You may go on to actually make this movie in black and white and on a prop plane, and it may even be a big hit, but it won't be at this studio. And that's about the only thing that Eisner insisted on, was that it meet modern audience expectations for what it was to travel on an airplane, which by the 1970s meant a jetliner. And it meant a color film. And ultimately, he was right. The Zaz team caved on this one in an excellently chosen case of pick your battles, because some of their upcoming battles included casting choices where the studio wanted to cast well-known comedic actors, and even whether or not they'd be able to direct the movie, they wanted some well-known comedic actors, or directors, to direct the movie. But they picked their battles. They were initially given what I'm going to call a yellow light to direct. Basically, the studio would let them start directing, but retain the right to fire them and take over the movie for, I think it was the first 2 weeks. Like, if they failed to produce something that was usable and laughable, because it's a comedy, then the studio would fire them and put in a director of their choice. Now, luckily, the dailies were such a huge hit that this was quickly a non-issue. The dailies is basically where they screen the previous day's roll that was shot to see what works and what doesn't. Do they need to retake any shots? And those dailies became like the hit of Paramount. People were coming in to watch them. Usually it was a chore. And of course the movie was made, and it is consistently ranked the funniest movie ever made, which is the rank it earned with the American Film Institute. Rolling Stone rated it second place to Blazing Saddles, which, okay, that's fair. Both movies are absolutely hilarious, so basically they're interchangeable as far as which is funnier. Now, obviously, there is a lot more in a book that's 345 pages long, and there is. And this book covers their childhood, casting choices, why they use their family in movies, how they came to pick Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's wonderful. And everything about it reads like fate. Like, they knew where they wanted to go when they were young men, and they aimed at that target, and by God, did they hit it. An absolute bullseye. One of the quotes from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, this one's also on the back cover, it says, quote, I was flying to Europe on a 747 and the pilots came back, made me get out of my seat and pulled me into the cockpit to take off with them so that they could say they flew with Murdoch. Peter Graves tells about a time he was standing in line at a supermarket and there's this kid with his mom in front of him and they're both trying to figure out where they've seen Graves before. And they keep looking back at him. I don't know, he looks familiar. And as the mom and the kid are leaving, he leans down and says,
You like movies about gladiators?
And he says they were never seen again. They took off running and were never seen again. And I laughed out loud. I literally was sitting there like crying. I was laughing so hard reading this book. It was just wonderful. I actually went ahead and got it on Audible for my husband because he prefers Audible. He'll listen to books while he's working. And on the Audible side, I think that everyone quoted in the book read their quotes. I might be wrong, I haven't listened to it yet, but it does have a full cast, which includes Weird Al Yankovic, the Zaz team, Jimmy Kimmel, Beau Bridges, because Lloyd Bridges, of course, is deceased, all of whom are quoted in the book. So I'm hoping it's a full cast, I'm hoping they read their parts, I think that will make it even funnier. This book was an incredibly fast read. I think I read it in 2 days, and honestly, if I hadn't had to work, I probably could have read it in 1. It was wonderful. It was funny. I loved every second I spent reading it, and I could hardly put it down. I highly recommend this. If you need a good laugh and a walk down memory lane, I mean, okay, other people's memories, but still, it was fun. It was fun to read, and gods know we could all use a good laugh these days going into this political clusterfuck of an election season. And that's it this week. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.